The analogy that I use is kind of like an airplane. In an airplane, you have the cockpit where all the general partners, the deal operators sit. Could be one person, could be five people, in a cockpit. And then you have all the passive investors in coach invest the money, and this is all a venture, right? We're all partners together. The plane goes down, everybody crashes, right? But the people in the cockpit run the deal. They find the deal, they get the lending in their name, so it doesn't go in the passive investor's name. They take the brunt of the legal liability. That's kind of why I think accredited investors really gravitate towards this, because when your net worth goes past $1 million, you are much more of a candidate to be sued, right? Because you're actually worth something to get. But now this allows you to go out and diversify your net worth into dozens and dozens and dozens of different assets out there, and then geographic areas. So, and then this is again where I realized, like all you look around, like all these big apartment complexes, most of them, yeah, are owned by institutions, right? Through a REIT format where, the Wall Street companies, the big investment companies go to Wall Street to get capital, but very little returns go to those investors, right? Most of it goes through fees from middlemen. The financial planners are another part of that whole system. But then there are some properties out there, probably the minority, that are owned by 50, 100 something individual investors, accredited investors, as kind of like a co-op, if you think about it like this in this airplane format. And that was kind of where, like, wow, if you're able to find these types of groups and communities, then you're able to directly invest in these types of assets. And there's a little bit of a misnomer. Again, I'm not a financial planner, so apparently I can't really talk about this type of stuff, or you
For
shouldn't listen to
education
me. But
purposes.
to me, you want to diversify your holdings, right? Like, I think it's a huge mistake. Some of my clients come in and, they come from a little bit of family money where the family owns like a 12 unit apartment in California, or a 50 unit in Dallas. To me, that's exactly what you don't want to do, because you have all your eggs in one basket. You know, what you want to be doing is breaking up your net worth into smaller chunks. And that kind of makes this possible with this format, right? Now you're able to put 50 grand in this one, 100 grand in here, and just spread it around several dozen deals, right? And, but if you're not the one operating it, you're somewhat infinitely scalable at that point, right? The general partners, the people in the cockpit, are running the deal for you and incentivized to do that, right? When the deal makes money, they make money. So that's kind of where, I think this framework kind of comes hand in hand, and this is where I started to realize, and it got confirmed by, so many people that I would build connections with, like, yeah, this is the way they morph their portfolios and stepped up from the second floor of the wealth elevator to the third floor.
And so I guess the hardest part really is finding these groups. Did you just stumble across it? Well, you mentioned that you'll just talk to a couple people, but now that you're there, is it like a website that everybody go to? Or is it just kind of like, it has to be word of mouth to get into
It is
these
kind of
particular
word of mouth.
things?
I mean, there are websites, but unfortunately, as you know, like, once there's a thing, now you have all these fake review sites, and people pay for sponsorship, pay to play, right? And oftentimes the best marketers are kind of pushed the most. We try to find like the most introverted operators and to partner with. Those are like oftentimes the best deals to get into. But yeah, it's kind of a shadow network, to be honest, right? I mean, you're talking very little amount of people who are accredited investors, million or greater, and also invest this type of way. Your second generation families, third generation, your family wealth, they've already got their connections. And I mean, what's kind of, I guess it's not a surprise, but a lot of them just don't invest at that point, right? The kids are just kind of spoiled kids and just living off the family wealth. I think one consistent thing that we see in our community is this component of first generation multimillionaires. If you see the things that you're investing in, they're not flashy, sexy things. They're just more blue collar type of assets that make a lot of sense. That's kind of hard coded into, common American needs. But yeah, I think that's, answer the question. I mean, the way I found it is, I just started from the bottom and just started to chip away through these networks, and, it took me a long time. And part of that is just going through a lot of garbage networks too.
Hey, you gotta find a diamond in the rough, right?
Yeah, I mean, but if you know what you're looking, I think that's the thing. If you know what you're looking for, you usually can vet things out by like looking around and seeing the quality of the people around you, right? Like for example, the local RIA is probably the one of the worst places to go and look because at the end of the day, not to typecast people, but what is your net worth, right? Most of those kinds of things, you got people running around wholesaling houses, flipping houses. Their net worths are usually non-accredited investors doing that type of stuff because they have to, right? They haven't accumulated that critical mass of $500,000 net worth to be on the more passive side.
Sense. And because I'm thinking of like, even though there are a lot of deals obviously being done locally, it's just you need to know the right people that are doing it. Because like even here in Maryland, like, they got data centers that are popping up left and right. And then there's obviously hotels that are being popped up or even multi-unit apartment complexes that are going up. Somebody had to make that deal, but they had to do it somewhere. And it's like, do you can you possibly like reverse engineer or even reach out to them and be like, hey, I would like to be part of the next one?
Yeah, but typically, like I said, majority of these projects that you're mentioning, they're done by a large institution. Especially data centers, right? Like, I mean, a lot of that is more institutionally ran. So they're not looking unless you're an individual investor bringing like a $5 million check in. They don't even want to talk to you. But so yeah, you're kind of looking more for the grassroots operator. But you know what? Like once you start to grow with a set of operators, you and your net worth and your check sizes will grow too, theoretically too. But there are, as you're saying that, another thing to think about is like if you're talking Washington D.C., the numbers aren't going to work there, right? Like to do some of these things, and that was goes back to invest where the numbers make sense, but live where you want. So you are likely to have to get off your butt and travel to these things, which is a big daunting task when you don't even know what you're looking for. And then yeah, like like that's the other thing is like you just look around the room and the people that you in these groups, like what is their net worth, right? Like I can kind of think about our group. Most of the people are in their 50s at this point. And then the hard thing too is, when your net worth gets a little bit higher and, you're trying to hide from people, right? Like
Right.
from a privacy standpoint. So you're not around flashing your money